Have you ever looked at someone and thought, there is something different about this person, even before a single word was spoken? It wasn't the clothes, it wasn't the face, it wasn't even the body. It was the invisible evidence of discipline that quietly announced itself before any introduction ever could. People spend their lives trying to appear confident, attractive, and successful, yet they ignore the one habit that silently reveals more about character than almost anything else. Because there is one place where excuses are exposed, comfort is challenged, and identity is forged day after day. The question isn't whether someone can lift heavy weights. The real question is whether someone has learned to lift the weight of responsibility, consistency, and self-control. That's why one simple habit can tell you more about a person's future than hours of conversation ever will. The body is often the loudest confession the mind has ever made. And if you know how to read that confession, you'll begin to understand people in a completely different way. Most people think physical training is about building muscle, but psychology tells a far deeper story. Every workout is a negotiation between comfort and growth. Every repetition is a decision to become stronger than yesterday instead of remaining the same. Every early morning alarm, ignored by the world but answered anyway, is proof that discipline can exist even when nobody is watching. Human beings rarely become successful because of motivation. Motivation disappears the moment life becomes uncomfortable. Discipline survives long after excitement dies. That is why the strongest transformations are never physical first. They are psychological first. The mirror only reflects what the mind has already decided to become. The body follows where the identity leads. The truth is that people don't fall in love with muscles. They are drawn towards certainty, emotional stability, resilience, and quiet confidence. Those qualities simply happen to grow in the same environment where consistent training takes place. Someone who repeatedly chooses temporary discomfort over immediate pleasure develops an entirely different relationship with life. Challenges become invitations instead of threats. Failure becomes feedback instead of humiliation. Rejection becomes direction instead of destruction. That shift in thinking changes everything, because attractive people are rarely those with perfect appearances. They are the ones who no longer need external validation to believe in their own worth. Think about what happens inside the mind every single time a difficult workout begins. The brain immediately searches for an escape. It whispers that today isn't the right day. It promises tomorrow will be easier. It invents reasons to stop long before the body actually needs to. That inner voice exists in every area of life. It appears before difficult conversations, before ambitious goals, before meaningful relationships, and before every opportunity that demands courage. Learning to ignore that voice inside a training session teaches the brain a lesson that extends far beyond physical fitness. It teaches that feelings don't always deserve obedience. Sometimes the greatest act of self-respect is refusing to negotiate with the version of yourself that always chooses comfort over growth. Confidence is often misunderstood because people mistake loudness for certainty. Real confidence is surprisingly quiet. It doesn't compete for attention. It doesn't demand approval. It doesn't desperately try to impress strangers. Instead, it walks through life carrying the memory of promises that were actually kept. Confidence isn't created by compliments. It's created by evidence. Every difficult session completed, every excuse defeated, every personal limit pushed slightly further becomes another piece of evidence stored inside the subconscious mind saying, I can trust myself. And when someone trusts themselves deeply, the world begins trusting them too, because certainty is contagious. Imagine meeting someone for the very first time and forming an impression before a single word is exchanged. It happens faster than logic can explain. Long before conversations reveal values, ambitions, or emotional maturity, the mind begins collecting silent evidence. It notices posture, energy, composure, the way someone carries pressure, and the quiet confidence that doesn't beg for attention. The fascinating part is that these signals are rarely created overnight. They are the accumulated result of hundreds of ordinary decisions repeated consistently over time. This is why one simple question can reveal far more than people expect. Not because physical training makes someone superior, and certainly not because appearance determines character, but because the willingness to train consistently often reflects deeper psychological patterns. The real story is never about the weights being lifted. The real story is about the invisible habits that made someone return again and again, even on the days when nobody would have noticed if they had stayed home. That is where psychology becomes far more interesting than fitness, because the body often becomes a visible record of invisible choices. And if you know how to read those choices, you begin to understand why some people naturally command respect, while others spend years desperately trying to earn it through words alone. Every meaningful transformation begins with a conversation that nobody else can hear. It happens inside the mind during moments of resistance, when comfort offers a convincing argument and discipline quietly offers a different future. Most people wait until they feel motivated before taking action, yet motivation is one of the least reliable emotions a human being can depend upon. It arrives without warning, disappears without apology, and cannot be negotiated with when life becomes difficult. Discipline operates according to entirely different rules. It asks for action first and allows confidence to arrive later. This reversal changes everything because people who depend on feelings eventually become controlled by their feelings, while people who depend on habits slowly become the architects of their own identity. Every decision to continue despite discomfort sends a message to the subconscious that promises are meant to be kept. That message grows stronger every single time. Consistency wins over convenience. Eventually, the mind stops asking whether difficult things should be done and simply accepts that they are part of who you have chosen to become. Identity is never created by one extraordinary performance. It is quietly built through ordinary actions repeated long enough that they become impossible to separate from your character. There is something incredibly powerful about knowing you can rely on yourself. Many people search endlessly for confidence in compliments, relationships, social media approval, financial success, or the admiration of strangers. But confidence built on external validation is always temporary because it depends on circumstances that constantly change. Genuine confidence grows from evidence collected through personal experience. Every promise kept to yourself becomes another reason to trust your own judgment. Every difficult morning conquered becomes another reminder that comfort does not control your decisions. Every challenge completed becomes another brick in the psychological foundation that supports emotional stability. Eventually, this internal evidence becomes so convincing that criticism loses much of its power, because your self-image is no longer being negotiated with every opinion that passes by. This explains why truly confident people rarely feel the need to announce their confidence. They have already proven enough to themselves that they no longer require constant confirmation from everyone else. The human brain is remarkably efficient at protecting energy. It prefers familiar routines because they require less mental effort and it naturally resists anything that introduces uncertainty or discomfort. This tendency was once essential for survival, but in modern life, it often becomes the greatest obstacle to personal growth. Every ambitious goal demands behavior that initially feels unnatural. Every meaningful improvement requires stepping beyond familiar limits. The mind interprets this unfamiliar territory as danger, even when no real danger exists. That is why excuses sound so logical in the moment. They are not random thoughts. They are protective mechanisms designed to preserve comfort. Understanding this changes the way challenges are interpreted. Instead of believing resistance means something is wrong, you begin recognizing resistance as evidence that meaningful growth is taking place. The discomfort itself becomes confirmation that your identity is expanding beyond its previous limitations. Suddenly, difficult experiences lose much of their emotional threat because they are no longer viewed as punishment. They become proof that progress is occurring exactly where it should. One of the greatest misconceptions about personal development is the belief that success changes people. More often than not, success simply reveals the habits that were already present long before visible results appeared. Strong character is developed in private, long before it is recognized in public. The applause always arrives after the work has been completed. The respect comes after years of consistency that nobody celebrated. This is why chasing recognition usually produces frustration, while chasing improvement quietly produces recognition as a natural consequence. The world responds differently to people who are no longer desperate to prove themselves, because desperation has a psychological signature that cannot be hidden. It influences body language, decision-making, communication, relationships, and emotional reactions. In contrast, genuine self-respect creates a calm presence that feels remarkably secure. It is not loud because it does not need to compete. It is not arrogant because it has nothing to defend. It simply exists as the natural outcome of repeated evidence that difficult things can be faced without running away. People are often surprised by how quickly emotional resilience develops once they stop avoiding discomfort. Every challenge completed reduces the fear of the next challenge because the brain begins collecting memories of survival instead of failure. Anxiety loses much of its influence when experience repeatedly demonstrates that discomfort is temporary, while growth is lasting. This psychological shift extends into every aspect of life. Difficult conversations become easier because emotional discomfort is no longer unfamiliar. Career opportunities become less intimidating because uncertainty has already become part of daily practice. Relationships improve because emotional stability replaces impulsive reactions. The greatest reward is not physical strength at all. It is the realization that your circumstances no longer dictate your mindset. Instead, your mindset begins shaping the way you experience your circumstances. That is a level of freedom many people spend their entire lives searching for, without realizing it begins with something as simple as consistently doing what is difficult when it would be easier not to. The moment you begin paying attention to human behavior instead of human words, an entirely different picture starts to emerge. People can carefully rehearse conversations, create impressive first impressions, wear expensive clothes, memorize confident body language, and even convince others that they possess qualities they have never actually developed. But there is one thing that remains incredibly difficult to fake over a long period of time, and that is consistent self-discipline. The reason this matters has very little to do with physical appearance, and almost everything to do with psychology. A person who willingly chooses temporary discomfort over immediate pleasure is training far more than the body. That individual is strengthening the ability to delay gratification, manage emotions, remain committed when excitement disappears, and continue moving forward even when progress feels invisible. These qualities rarely stay confined to one area of life. They begin influencing relationships, careers, financial decisions, emotional stability, and personal growth, because the brain does not separate discipline into isolated compartments. It simply learns one powerful lesson that gradually becomes part of identity. Difficult things are no longer avoided simply because they are uncomfortable. Once that lesson becomes deeply rooted, every future challenge is approached with a completely different mindset. And that psychological transformation is often far more valuable than any physical transformation people notice on the surface. Human beings naturally seek comfort because comfort feels safe, predictable, and familiar. Yet nearly every meaningful achievement exists on the opposite side of that comfort. This creates an invisible battle that takes place every single day inside the mind. One voice argues for convenience, immediate pleasure, and temporary relief, while another quietly reminds us of the future we claim to want. Most people mistakenly believe successful individuals possess extraordinary motivation that ordinary people simply lack. But psychological research and real-life experience repeatedly suggests something different. Motivation is temporary because it depends on emotion, and emotions constantly fluctuate according to circumstances, energy levels, stress, weather, relationships, and countless unpredictable factors. Discipline, however, functions independently of emotional excitement because it is rooted in commitment rather than feeling. The remarkable consequence of this distinction is that people who rely on discipline continue taking meaningful action long after motivation has disappeared. And every time they do, they strengthen the neural pathways associated with consistency, resilience, and self-control. Over months and years, those repeated actions shape not only external achievements, but also internal beliefs about personal capability. Confidence begins emerging naturally because the subconscious mind now possesses undeniable evidence that promises made to oneself are actually being honored rather than abandoned whenever life becomes inconvenient. One of the greatest misunderstandings in modern culture is the assumption that confidence originates from appearance alone. While appearance can certainly influence first impressions, authentic confidence grows from a much deeper psychological foundation. It is built through accumulated experiences that repeatedly prove to the mind that obstacles can be overcome without surrendering to fear or discomfort. Every challenging decision completed, every difficult habit maintained, every excuse resisted, and every personal standard honored becomes another piece of psychological evidence, reinforcing the belief that you are capable of handling adversity. This evidence cannot be purchased, borrowed, or gifted by another person, because it must be earned through direct experience. That is why externally validated confidence often disappears the moment criticism appears, while internally earned confidence remains remarkably stable despite rejection, failure, or temporary setbacks. The person who has repeatedly demonstrated resilience to themselves